Well, it's fancy seeing you here.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
I mean, if you look at the title of the show, which we were incredibly creative with, which is The Freddie and Alyssa Show. Where have you been?
Would you feel it's more the Freddie show these days?
I mean, it's always been the Freddie show, but you know...
It's Freddie's world. We're all just living in it, right?
That's probably the truest statement ever made.
That you've ever heard?
Yeah.
I can kind of get behind on that.
I will say, Alyssa kind of was like way ahead of me in real estate. Like you kind of put a stamp in real estate, and she was kind of like the queen. And you were heading everything, and you were doing it, and then here's Freddie chugging along going, please give me some real estate information. How do I do the contract? How do I do this? And my wife mentored me.
I did.
And then as we continue to progress and as we are going, now we're kind of like at a tug of war.
I think so.
And we're working together on all these deals.
I have to say, I am so proud of you. Y'all, he's been crushing. So annoying. For anyone listening, he was putting the mic closer so you could hear more of all of the praise I'm giving.
Yes.
But no, really, I'm so freaking proud of you. You've been spearheading so many of these listings and projects that we're working on, and you really know your stuff now.
I will say in the past 6 months, 100%, like I could now go on I always say, if you can comfortably go on a stage in front of 50,000 people and talk about what you're best at and be able to take questions and feel comfortable, that's when I don't want to say I'm an expert yet. Like acting, real estate, there's always room to grow in the most expert. There's so many real estate agents that are just experts. But when it comes to the actual, like doing the deals, understanding every aspect of the deal, I know now.
You know everything.
I could definitely, and it just feels so good. And that's something too that's led to a lot of happiness. And I've kind of went through this in that transition where like competency and progression, you start to fall more and more in love when you start to get good at something. Yeah. So I think a lot of people get hung up on their passion where they're like, well, I have to love it. And it's like, even if you just kind of like it, but you become competent, you start to become prideful. Yeah, like now when the phone rings or I'm talking to a Zillow lead, like I have zero nerves about it because I know, like before you're just like, oh yeah, you know what? Let me double check on that and I'll get back to you. Yeah. You could answer like 5 out of 10 questions and then you say, oh, let me double check and I'll get back to you. But now it's like 9.5 out of 10 and I'm like,
you know it all.
Unless it's something interesting, like something new is like a transfer of a solar lease.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, okay, let me look that up. You read the contract and you go, oh, it just needs to be an agreement signed. I didn't know off the top of my head, so that's why you're always learning. But little things like that.
And you know what else is interesting on that note? With real estate before, we really serviced a broad area, very broad, all of Central Florida, which from time to time, there will always be that exception that we will help out,
yes,
of course. But we've really niched down to the area that we help buy and sell, buyers and sellers. So that's what we're doing right now. We really focus on something we call the Disney corridor. So it's Reunion, Champions Gate, Celebration, all of the neighboring towns right around Disney. So it's helpful to be a little bit more confident when you really know your area. I mean, we know everything about these areas.
Well, and we've done massive studying from Google Earth to driving around. I think we've driven every neighborhood in the entire 3-mile radius. So anytime we go do a showing, we're like, they're like, oh, have you been in this neighborhood? We're like, yep. And then we know where everything's at. So we put in that time. But I wrote this down too. What's interesting, especially for everyone on the podcast, I think a lot of real estate agents do this. When we say that we're niche in this 3-mile radius, that's what we market. That's where the Zillow leads come in. Right. That's where the money's being spent because we know the 3-mile radius. But if somebody knows us, a cousin, a friend, one of you lovely people who are coming, and like, we want to buy in Tampa, we're going to be there for a week. We have no problem going to Tampa, grabbing lunch, hanging out, and finding you a home.
Right.
But if a stranger's calling you, trying to invest in a $1.2 million home in Daytona Beach, and they're like, I need to know the exact neighborhoods, I can figure it out, but you're not as, oh, in this area, here's the streets, here's the neighborhoods. Yeah. So, but yeah, if anyone, like, even if a family member is like, we're going to go buy in Miami this weekend, well, we'll drive down and have a fun weekend.
Listen, I know Miami. I grew up in South Florida. Don't play.
So it just depends. But I do want to bring up something that's really interesting is the conversation. This is how you always know what pulse is happening in pop culture and politics is from TikTok and from YouTube and from Instagram, from social media in general. And some of the things that I've been talking about on TikTok lately has really gotten a lot of debate going.
Yes, and I have to say, this guy on TikTok has been printing views. I mean, how many in the past week would you say you received?
Oh, I don't, maybe like 6 or 7
million
views. But I can't be cocky because it's just like you have to continue to perform. Or
of course.
So it's like I'm just basking in it.
He's being humble. He's got New York Times, BuzzFeed, some prominent celebrity figures, if you will,
that are reaching out. It's not a big deal.
And DMing him. He's like, "Oh, look who just DM'd me." I'm like,
it's not a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's awesome.
But there could be some cool little interviews coming up. But
okay, tell us about the topics and kind of like what that's been looking like.
Well, and this also helps me, and this is where what I love about content is I love doing my funny lifestyle stuff because that's who I am as like Freddie off the clock.
Right.
But I felt like I was missing a lot of like business Freddie, professional Freddie online, and I just started making videos about what we were experiencing as a real estate agent, but with society in mind. Like selflessly, instead of being like, well, how can I promote my real estate business? And let me think about this video. Like, it's something I'm passionate about, which I'm hearing when we get calls. There's nothing more frustrating for the buyer and for real estate agents when you get a phone call and it's someone's like, hey, I'm a friend of yours, or hey, I follow you on social media. I'm ready to buy my first house. Can you help me? Where are you buying? Orlando. No kidding. Well, hey, let's get you started with the lender. So you connect them with the lender. They're going over all their things. They're so excited. And then the air gets let out of them because they realize like, oh, crap, I cannot afford an average home in Orlando. I thought I could because I'm spending $2,800 on rent. Why couldn't I afford $2,300 on a mortgage? But it's that whole process that I've been educating people on of what's going on in the housing market. And then I got into this debate where I didn't mean to pick on boomers, but it just seems so common that the people in the 1980s, the boomers, when they were our age, they were having a one-parent working household most of the time, and they were able to afford 3 kids in a house on one salary. And then the argument is, well, did people in the 80s make $12,000? Did they make $50,000? And for me, like, I don't know if you remember, if you even gave a crap about money or numbers,
but a kid.
Like, of course, people made just $12,000 like on minimum wage back in the 80s, but I grew up in the 80s. Like, we're not talking about 1912. We're talking about the 80s and 90s where my friends and their parents, like, people were making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 back then, and you could get houses for $60,000. Where now the average home in Orlando is $419,000. So you have to earn about $120,000 a year in the household without cars, without credit card debts to afford that. And even then, you're kind of pressed against the wall.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the debate that I'm going through, but I'm taking each niche topic and trying to share and educate people so they can get prepared. Because if someone's looking to buy a house, what do people do? I want to buy a house. Call the lender. And they want to buy today. But if you think you're going to buy in a year, call an agent, call a lender, talk with them and say, what is this going to look like? Because in the next 12 months, you might save an extra $10,000. You might not buy a vehicle until the day after you buy your house. You might pay off a couple credit cards. You might sacrifice that vacation and go, let me get into my house first, then vacation. All of those things line up, and over a 12-month preparation period, you're ready. But when you call today, I'm ready to go, and then you learn that, now it's demoralizing because you have to do a year of prep.
Right.
To get back to that. Yeah. So I'm just trying to educate the market and the world on what's going on, and I'm not trying to pick fights with different generations. But our millennials are working our asses off.
We are. And I saw a video the other day where this gentleman was saying a lot of millennials have side hustles, and not because they love it and it's their passion. It's because they're trying to do anything possible to make money to just keep the lights on and, pay for your housing. So it really is interesting to look at that, because even looking back to when we lived in California, I mean, any city you live in, it's expensive these days.
Yes.
Period. But California was really, really crazy. I mean, we even looked at real estate for a minute before we ended up not staying there. And it was so unbelievably pricey, outrageous. But I mean, we were looking at what, like maybe a 2-bedroom condo, and it was in a pretty outrageous price range for a 2-bedroom condo. You're just kind of like, what?
Yeah, I mean, to simplify basically what we've been talking about is I stopped arguing about like the 1980s and 1990s, and I go, we don't need to look further than before the pandemic. Because when me and Alyssa were moving to Florida and we wrote down, do we Airbnb, do we rent an apartment, or do we just buy a home? So we were looking at rent prices. We were looking at home prices. We know what houses cost, and you can look this up on Zillow and stuff too. We knew what things cost in Florida in 2020. And as an example, the one in Patriots Landing, $320,000 in 2020. We saw a house. We loved it. You know how we talk about Reunion nonstop. There was a home in a unique portion of Reunion. So it wasn't the big estates or anything like that. It's just this cute little home in this like pastel neighborhood called Patriots Landing. Cute. $320,000 was the cost of the home. But here's where the big misconception happens. That $320,000 home now went up to $550,000, which is
it's more than that. I looked yesterday.
I know. But I'm just trying to
give them an idea.
I don't want to I just wanted to make it simple. But yeah, you could probably do like $625,000 for it. But let's say $550,000 just to make it a little more fair for the argument. But the biggest difference is that if we bought that house in 2020 at a 2.5% interest rate, the payment would have only been $2,300 a month. So we'd be living in this $320,000 home, 2.5% interest rate over 30 years for just $2,200 a month. And you would have to prove that you make $80,000 a year to afford that loan. Mm-hmm. That same house today, if we said, you know what, we love it, let's buy it. It's $550,000, the same house, and it's a 7% interest rate. So now it would be $3,800 a month over a 30-year loan. And you would have to prove that you make $130,000 a year to afford that. And that's without car payments and without credit cards. And this is the part of the video, or student loans. And this is the part of the video that I did not know off the top of my head, but I wanted to research it. Over the course of the 30 years, the Freddie in 2020, if we bought that home for $320,000, we would have ended up paying $146,000 in interest over the 30-year period, which is $466,000. So over 30 years, we would have spent $466,000 on that home. And God knows what it'll be worth in 30 years. If we bought that home today, it would be $789,000 in interest over the course of 30 years, which would be $1.33 million for that home in 30 years. So what we could have paid in 2020 would have cost us $466 over 30 years, and now the same house is $1.3 over 30 years. Wow. So we don't need to go back to the 80s and argue who had it worse. This was pre-pandemic, just 3 years ago. Wow. So that is why we're seeing in the market where millennials are like, how do we get a starter home? And that's just housing. That's not even groceries. Last thing I'll say. Today's sponsor is Easy Canvas Prints. Elevate your home or office decor with Easy Canvas Prints. Look at this. Look at this couple here. On our wedding day, 2020, December 31st, 2020, when I married the love of my life, we wanted this memory to have in our home. We were debating on putting it in the podcast studio. It kind of goes with the color scheme, or we might have it in the living room, but we're still kind of deciding where we would like it. But Easy Canvas Prints, it's awesome. You just upload anything you want from your camera roll. You can make it custom, wood frame, metallic frame. It's great for gifts, for memories, anniversary. But you can send it as a gift. So all you have to do is visit the website. So don't wait to elevate your home or office decor with custom canvas print today. Visit easycanvasprint.com/F&A for a special offer for our listeners. Get unlimited 16 by 20 canvas prints for only $19.99 each. Again, that's easycanvasprint.com/F&A. Now back to the show. I'm so excited to make this new video. Someone doesn't believe that we spend $1,200 a month on groceries. They're like, what the hell do they buy? I'm like, how do you not, like, what do you all spend on groceries? How do you not spend $1,000 these days?
I mean, prices are insane. I'll go to Publix, our local grocery store, and you go in for 5 things and you rack up $100 easy.
Easy.
I mean, inflation is really bad right now. And I just don't know, and maybe it's a generational thing, but I just don't know how millennials and even this newer generation Gen Z is going to ever get ahead.
I mean, I believe the only solution, if you're lucky enough to have a parent that will pay a down payment or co-sign for you, but that can also get kind of sticky. If that's not an option, then you either have, and obviously there's
a lot of kids are staying with their parents longer and saving money for a down payment to do that. I think
Gen Z, they have a shot at figuring this out, because if you're 19 or 20 and you're single and you're still a kid and you're still at home, that's not a big deal. That's not taboo like it was for Gen X or millennials to stay with their parents. If you lived at your parents at 25, you were like considered a loser. Nowadays, Gen Z, it's like, oh, be there till 30. That's the new norm. At least 26, because I think that's the healthcare where they kick you out. But if you are staying at home, working a job and saving money, you could buy yourself a home, or at least have investment so that you can then go out with roommates at 25, 3 of you, and have low cost and save all your money to invest in businesses or invest in yourself. The generation that got pinched was the millennials.
Yeah.
We're too old to live with mom and dad, and we're also too old to go split an apartment.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you and I going, let's go rent a house and split it with 2 other married couples. Like, the millennials got pinched.
Yeah.
So the Gen Z might be young enough to still save.
I think they're going to be okay.
But my solution for millennials, and some people don't like to hear this, but this is what we're doing. I'm just speaking out for millennials. We have to make more money. We have to build skill sets that pay us more money.
Yeah, of course. But that's why people have 1, 2, sometimes 3 jobs.
Yeah. Just to get in, but in the downtime, it's like, what skill sets can we continue to build that will pay us more so that we can get out of it? And then our plan is like, I know financially people say never pay your house off, but with the business that we're in, there's a part of me that's like, I just want to, like, every commission check we make, I just want to pay the house off. I know I should be investing in other properties, but for security reasons, I would just love to have everything paid off so we have no debt to anyone. And our bills are then just like $3,000 a month. And then you can start investing. But if anything ever happened, you only have to come up with $3,000, not $8,000 or something crazy.
Right.
So I think keeping the overhead low gives us opportunity.
Yeah. It's just different. And I feel with our generation too, we are in a unique time because there are so many new opportunities. Like, even think about content creation because of social media, the internet. Now one of the highest paid gigs is being an editor or creating content.
Ooh, yeah.
So think about AI, all of the technology and all of that's going on. I mean, there's so many job opportunities and so many skill sets that you can learn that it was very different back in the day. Even in the boomer generation, it was very different. You followed a traditional path, go to school, get a good job, you stay there for 40 years, but that just isn't really how it works anymore.
No.
Unfortunately.
Well, and you could get college for like $7,000.
Yeah.
You know, and like we said, things were cheaper. But here's where I do believe the comments. The best data you get is when you read comments, because it's in real time. Like, even if you go on the streets, people are like, what are you asking me? What's this on camera? The most truest pulse of the country is in comments. Yeah. And if you make content or read content and read the comments, people are, you all know this, people are not shying away from their feelings in the comment section. This is the true representation. So you will get millennials like how we would be, where they're just saying, like, I'm a millennial, I bought 2 houses, you need to invest, you need to get off your ass. And I go, I get that. For that type A person who's an entrepreneur, doesn't matter the circumstance, they're going to figure it out and build. But you can't also discredit, like, why is working like as a mailman or working as a waste management or truck driver, like, that is the American dream. What we grew up in the 80s and 90s, Like one person should be able to stay home and raise the kids, or if they wanted to be a teacher and someone wanted to be a police officer, those incomes should allow the average American to buy groceries, take a 1 year, like a vacation once a year, buy new shoes, have a nice Christmas, be able to do things for their house, go out to dinner, own their home.
Well,
like,
you know what I'm seeing now
we're speaking to
is that I guess childcare is so expensive that a lot of moms go, you know what? I need to just stay home instead of work to pay for childcare that's so expensive. The moms just go, you know what? I'll stay home. So, there are all these different challenges that I feel like the world's facing right now, but everyone's just doing their best. But we need to get this inflation under fixed immediately, because it's only getting worse. Every industry, even my hair guy was telling me that the colors that they're purchasing now, it's just so high that they had to raise their prices. Every industry is facing this. So
here's the one thing I haven't figured out. People will say, well, if we are paying employees more, then it's passed on to the customer. And that makes sense. If you pay a McDonald's worker $20 an hour instead of, when I worked there, $5 an hour, when a Big Mac was $3, now it's $9. But why is it only relevant now?
Yeah.
Like, weren't they always raising prices? Like, why all of a sudden, if you raise the price of the hair dye, now the service becomes more expensive?
Yeah.
But how come that wasn't happening at rapid speed over the past 40 years?
Yeah.
Like, because people could actually live. Where now it's just like, oh, we'll pay $15 an hour, but now our burgers are higher. Well, we'll pay $20 an hour, now our burgers are higher. Now all of a sudden we're going and getting a burger from Red Robin. It's $18. Like, what the heck?
All right, I've got my dinner and blanc call.
Okay, you go do that.
Real quick.
Well, we'll wrap up. I don't know how long we've been going.
I think it's been like 20 minutes maybe. I have this call. I don't know if you guys remember, but we're doing Dinner and Blanc year 2 for me, and we finally found a venue, but it's top secret. So yeah.
Top secret. Well, you go do that. Okay, I'm going to sign off.
All right.
And
love you guys so very much.
Can you even squeeze by?
I don't know. Let's see.
All right, everyone.
I wore cute pants today.
You did wear cute pants. Let's see if you can shimmy by.
Got it.
But anyway, I think that's just a really interesting conversation. I'm going to continue to do some research and try to figure out how to help people, how to have the narrative out there of what can we do. Excuse me. Is it on a policy level? Without getting into politics, of course, but what is it that we all have to do? But I think at the end of the day, no matter the struggles that we're going through, it's like what I go through on a daily basis is thinking to myself, like, I just need to make sure I'm doing the right things, making sacrifices, and continuing to work hard and making good financial decisions. And that is working longer hours right now, but not forever. It's like, put a plan together where you go, all right, I'm going to work 3 jobs. I'm going to sacrifice everything for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Then get yourself out of that mess. Is it credit card debt? Is it a bad living situation? Is it a bad job? Or do you need to pay off a house or need to do something? So it's like, instead of looking at it like back in the day, oh, we're going to chip away for 30 years or 40 years. I think our generation's more like, well, how can we sacrifice for 3 months, a year, 2 years, and just get out of the mud so that we can actually rest and explore and enjoy the conveniences. That's another thing too that's much different than the 80s. Back in the 80s, there wasn't as many channels. There definitely wasn't the streaming services. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't any of these conveniences, from Uber to Uber Eats to Netflix and Amazon and all of these luxuries. And yes, you don't have to spend money on Amazon. You don't need Netflix. You need a cell phone. You need internet. These are 2 things that people in the 80s didn't have to pay for. So there's just all these shifts happening, but we have such a beautiful world that we've built. There's obviously problems, but in general, like, it is flourishing. And if we can get our money right, you can participate in all the goods. And I know the counter argument is that, well, we shouldn't have to work 3 jobs just to have the human basic rights of, like, shelter, food, and water, and healthcare, and education. And that is the debate. But I think there's a way that it can be balanced. So maybe this is a narrative that eventually needs to shift at a policy level, at a political level. But everyone's so divided, and I don't see us coming together, sadly, in the next 4 to 5 years. Regardless of how the next election goes, I don't think people are going to come together. I think we're going to kind of still be divided. But maybe there'll be hope after that. that someone can come in and heal and bring people together, I don't know. I hope it doesn't get more and more divided. I hope we can find a way to come together. But in the next 5 years, we can all sit around and complain, or in these next 5 years, we can take control of our lives and say, look, I need to do what I need to do to get better. I need to take control of my own life because regardless of who's in office, I'm responsible to take care of all this stuff. And then let's hope that in the future, there's somebody who can come in and can bring us all together. Because regardless of what side you're on, there are going to be policies over the next 4 years that are going to help people. Things are going to be fixed in certain areas. It depends on who's elected. But I'm talking about the overall narrative of the country, of how can we bring us together? How can we stop being divided as Democrats and Republicans? And I feel like we're not even divided by Democrat and Republican anymore. I think we're more divided on, you either believe the mainstream media or you think the mainstream media is all propaganda and narrative pushing. So anything you want to talk about, it's kind of already been decided. It's not even about the main topics like the border or parental rights or anything like that. It just seems like whatever the mainstream media is talking about is true, and one group believes that, and whatever the mainstream media is talking about is false and propaganda, so we don't believe that. And that's just basically the two parties. So if you bring up a controversial figure, you're going to place it on one side based on how the media portrayed it. So I don't even think that because anytime I talk to someone who has a different political belief than me, we agree in the middle on pretty much everything. Like even some of the biggest issues, people aren't like so like, but we are so based on the news is real and the news is fake. That is the divide we have in the country. So that needs to change so that we can all agree on healthy debates. And that's all I really would love. I would love to be able to turn on the news, and even back during the pandemic, imagine just seeing someone going, we need to wear masks. I'm a Harvard-educated doctor for 40 years. And then right next to him was another Harvard-educated doctor for 40 years saying, we don't need masks. Like, why isn't that on the news? Like, why do we handpick who we can listen to? If you talk about a major issue in the world, why can't you have party A and party B both talking about it? Why is it only one party and you never hear from the other side? I just don't understand. If you genuinely wanted to bring people together and have truthful debates and have people come together, you need a debate of person A and person B sharing their experience in this world. And it just isn't like that. So all you're hearing is one narrative, or you're ignoring one narrative. And I think that's kind of where we are. So that is the overall arcing thing that's dividing us. I don't think it's actually micro policies. I think that's what's going to help. And that is also on a different, level, but inflation is included in that discussion to bring it all back to that. So we all just got to kind of hold on and go on a ride for the next, 5 years. And we got to hope, regardless of who's elected, that they do a great job and that they can help the everyday American and our neighbors and our friends and family. And then we have to take care of it ourselves as well. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, thank you all for stopping in. I really appreciate you. If you have any questions or comments, please write them down below. It'll be a great way for us to know, again, the pulse of all of our listeners of what is interesting to you, what you'd like to hear, opinions on what we are talking about, so we can dig in deeper and further on the next podcast. So I'm wishing you all the best week ever, and I can't wait to see you next Wednesday. Take care, everyone.